Hey guys, it's KayBeast, and this week I'm here with another cheap art supply challenge. I've wanted to do one again for a while, and I've had the supplies for a while, but then Inktober happened, and it got pushed back. But that's okay, it's finally over, so I can get back into that. Okay, so this is what I have for this week. I got this at Five Below for $5, and it is the exact same brand of product that I used in my last cheap art supply challenge. But I picked this one up because, first of all, it's larger, the paper is much bigger, and it has watercolor pans instead of tubes. So if you watched my last video, you might recall that I was very impressed with the pigment of the watercolor, but watercolor tubes tend to be a little better pigmented with cheaper supplies than pans do, at least in my experience. So I wanted to see how the same brand held up with a different kind of watercolor. So I'm going to open this up and show you what's in it. Okay. Inside the watercolor kit there was a pad of watercolor paper, a plastic tray with a variety of wells inside. There's some mixing wells, and then these I believe were just part of the packaging to keep everything in place, but those could be used for mixing wells as well, I believe. And watercolor pans. So I'm already really excited about the watercolors. There's also a brush in here, because while the plastic tray of the watercolors feels, you know, pretty cheap, it's actually in this metal case. I think it's aluminum. It feels like aluminum anyway, but it has a lid with the brand logo, and apparently it can be closed up. So that's pretty cool. You just put your brush in there, and that's pretty neat. So I'm gonna have to play with this. So let me set up something and see how these work. Alrighty, let's see what this is like. So the paper is the same as the last one. Doesn't mention paperweight or anything on it. The sheets are larger and feels roughly the same weight as my mixed media paper, maybe a little thinner. My mixed media paper is 160 GSM, so slightly thicker than sketch paper, but from what I recall from last time, the paper was not particularly, couldn't really hold up to a lot of watercolor work, and I had the same issue with ripping out of the pad as last time as well. So, however, it is larger, so that's pretty nice. The watercolors themselves are not labeled as far as their pigments go, but still I am pretty thrilled with this aluminum case. If the paints wind up not being that great, I might keep the case and just use it for something else. Could be a nice pencil case. So the brush is size 2 round brush, which is a pretty decent size, a pretty standard size. A little small, especially considering the size of the paper, but still usable. Still feels like there's some residue on it left over from the glue they used to finish it, but feels okay. And then this is just kind of like a nice little mixing well that came in it. I usually prefer different kinds of trays, but considering the fact that it came in the kit itself, that's pretty good. So let's see. It's kind of large. Do that. So I actually have some room to mess around here. So let's just start off by doing a swatch of the colors and see what they look like. Okay, so I have to say, the pans are definitely not as good as the tube paints. They're not nearly as pigmented, and I mean, some of the blue tones look pretty good, but blue pigments tend to be pretty strong anyway, especially that one. I'm guessing that one's probably ultramarine or some sort of phthalo blue or something, because those are pretty strong pigments. But all the other ones, not really, and these are particularly chalky, which is pretty common with cheaper paints, but again, the tube paints by this brand were significantly better. So yeah, so these aren't particularly great, but I still think you could probably do a lot with them. So I will do a full illustration with them. This particular kit did not come with everything else that the other one did, like a pencil and a sharpener and eraser. So to keep with the cheap, you know, art supply theme going, I have this number 2 mechanical Bic pencil that you can get like a pack of 20 for like $1 or something. So this is way cheaper than what I typically use. So I will use this for my sketch and use these for inking, for painting. And if I decide to ink something, I do have a bunch of ballpoint pens lying around that are also very cheap. So I will make sure that all of the products I use are cheap to keep with the theme. But I'm going to have to think about what I'm going to draw, and I think I'm just going to cut this off here and draw on the bottom sheet so I don't waste any paper. So since this is the same brand as what I used with my last cheap art supply challenge, I knew that the paper wouldn't be able to handle too much erasing or layering of watercolor, so I went into my sketch with that in mind and tried to keep all of my lines very light so that when I did erase I wouldn't damage the paper too much. As for the subject matter, I actually struggled for a few days to figure out what to draw with this, and in the end I decided to paint a hummingbird feeding from a flower because I wanted to pick something colorful so I could use as many of the paints as possible. And I had also been wanting to do some more nature and animal inspired works lately anyway, so that's just kind of what I was in the mood for. So as I said when I was working on the swatch, these paints are not that pigmented and they are very chalky, but by doing multiple layers I was able to get some pretty nice colors going. My biggest grievance with this stuff is the paper though. It does not absorb water well, or maybe I should say the other way, it soaks the water right up. Versus like with really nice watercolor paper, the paper will actually stay damp for a while, which will allow you to spread the paint around. This paper soaked it right up, even when I like really tried to wet it. So it made it difficult to move the paint around and to do like wet and wet techniques, which are something that I really like to do. So that was a little annoying, but I was able to work with it and just did a lot of texturing work with the brush itself to kind of build up the layers as I went. But yeah, overall, I mean, it wasn't terrible. I'm just used to more higher quality products, but for like a beginner, considering the fact that this whole set was $5 and you just gotta buy like a pencil, it's really not that bad. I do have to say though that if you are going to be going to Five Below and getting this brand of stuff, I highly recommend the other kit that I reviewed that has the tubes of paint, because it was just a better experience, and you get a lot more in the kit. So I don't know, I just enjoyed that stuff more. But anyway, one thing that I did near the end here that I kind of regretted was I used my ballpoint pen to do some outlining. And I'm not sure what it was, if it was the pen, if it was the paper, the paint, something didn't work. And while I was able to lay ink down just fine, something wound up getting stuck to the end of my pen. Whether it was rubbing paint off or it was just fibers from the paper coming up, I really couldn't tell. But it gunked up my pen really bad, so I kept having to wipe it on my paper towel to continue. So yeah, just a heads up, this paper did not like that pen very much, and it was quite difficult to work with. Although the end result looks really nice, the process was just not that fun. But yeah, so this wasn't a bad experiment, and it's not, you know, a terrible kit, just, you know, you do get what you pay for. But yeah, so this is the last one I'm going to do from Five Below. I've been into the store many times since then, trying to find new stuff. They don't really have that much to offer in terms of watercolor. So my next cheap art supply challenge will be a new store with more stuff. And I already have the supplies, so hopefully it won't take me too long to do the next one. So yeah, so let me know what you guys think. And leave me suggestions for other stores to check out. If they're in my area, I will do so. And yeah, thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you in the next video. My Pentel Pocket Brush pen, I did the actual henna work, just freehand without sketching beforehand. And it was kind of fun. Then I had cowboy boots and moccasins. Bird's nest. Right here? Yep. I want it. That is such a Vondi hat, isn't it?
I like how it literally just wiggles it.